Hi, this is Ami Gupta and today I'm going to talk about the StubbyDB. StubbyDB is a tool which helps us to create stub services for integration testing. You can stub any HTTP or HTTPS calls. So before answering why we should use the StubbyDB, I will like to explain this simple diagram. So this is our application and these are the backend services. If these backend services are the real backend application, we always face the problem of availability. Sometimes the servers are down, sometimes the applications are down. Sometimes we are expecting a different version of application, but there are some other version and maybe they are buggy. There is also a possibility that these services are under construction. The other problem is expected response. Maybe these applications are not having the data that we are expected, or all kind of data or all type of data that we are required to test our application, especially the negative cases. For example, we are expecting the 502 or server timeout or application crash or network or any kind of error. We sort out this problem using the simulators where we can stub and mock the data as per our requirement. But again, there is a problem that to create the simulators or to maintain them, we require the attention of developers. We can sort out that problem by creating a simulator based on the StubbyDB. Simulators based on StubbyDB can be maintained by anyone who is having the basic knowledge of regular expressions. They are fast, can be set up quickly, and can be maintained by anyone. StubbyDB is an npm repo, so you need to install it as you install any ordinary npm repository. We are gonna install it with the -g option, so it will be installed globally. While installing the StubbyDB on your machine, you may also require to use sudo if you do not have sufficient permission to install. Once it is installed, you will see the latest version of StubbyDB. You can also install a particular version of StubbyDB, but it is recommended that you are on the latest version of StubbyDB. Once it is installed, we have to create a repo that you can create manually, or you can use the StubbyDB init command. When you say StubbyDB init, it tries to create the repo with stub-repo. Since I had already created that repo, it doesn't allow me to create the same repo again. What we can do, we can provide the name of our repository in the last of the command. So now we can see that we have two folders, and if we explore it, we can see some folders and a configuration file. Now let's see how does it work. It didn't work because we just built the repo but we didn't start the StubbyDB. Go to the repo and type StubbyDB. It will tell you that what configuration it is using to run this instance. Go back to the browser and again try to access the URL. So what is wrong this time? Let's start the StubbyDB again with the -v option. It says that it is not able to load the response.yaml because we are in the wrong directory. And when StubbyDB doesn't find correct folder structure or the config.json, then it tries to load the default configuration. Let's go to the directory and hit the command again. Here you can see the config.json. Now we cannot see any red statement. Let's hit it and it works. Now as you can see that I am running it on the 777 port which is defined in my config.json. If I change this port to 9999, I will have to restart the application, otherwise it will not work directly. Because any change in the config.json or in the mapping files require the StubbyDB start. Forget about this 404 because your browser try to attempt another call for 5e icon.ico, but if you access it from some REST client, you will not see this error. You can see rest of the information which is appearing on screen. It is because of the -v option. This is a mapping file that we have defined in the config.json. This is a generated YAML file. Let's take the backup and keep only the information that we require to start with. Now you can see that I had mapped the hello Nusi URL with response.txt and fault.txt response. If we always want to serve a single file, we can also simplify it in this way. Since we are doing the changes in mappings, we need to restart StubbyDB and it is reflected here. Now if I don't want to read the response from any file, but I want to embed in mapping itself, I can use the body. And here you can see the response.txt as a simple text instead of a file. If the body is bigger, you can use the multi-line syntax. As you can see that response.txt file presents in stubs folder, but in the mapping file response.yaml we do not specify the stubs folder. It basically take it from the config.json. In the config.json we have defined the path. The advantage of the config.json is you can have your db set, dumps, mappings, stubs and other things all over the places. They are not required to be the part of same repository. Now let's see what is in the response.txt. It basically have the brief of all feature that StubbyDB supports. So let's see today. As you can see that today is an expression or other marker. Here I am using the random function to generate the alphanumeric string of 4 character. You can check the wiki page for the complete list of functions and the markers supported. Now how StubbyDB actually works. Whenever a request comes, it checks for the mappings defined in the YAML file and serves the corresponding response file. So in the StubbyDB we have basically two parts. One is mapping part where you define request and response mapping, which is quite easy, and the response file. So for each mapping you can have a particular response file. You can also use the regular expression to use the same response file for multiple mapping or same mapping for multiple response file. In this strategy, you basically make a response skeleton and you fill the data from the dumps and dbset. Dbset contains data in form of row and column. You can fill a particular column data into the response skeleton, and the dumps you can consider as individual files. This is a format of dbset and dumps. Here are two dumps I had created, file 1 and file 2. Let's see how does it work. The first part is dump location inside the dumps folder. Since file 1 and file 2 directly present in the dumps folder, I need not to specify it. Now I will rename it as with file 1, and instead of dbset key I will use file 2. Now you can see that it is replaced with the file 1 contents and file 2 contents. These are the actual contents of those files. You can also write them like this. Let's create a folder projects. Inside the projects folder I am creating two project dumps. One is automation and the other one is library. Now here I am defining the projects and I want to display automation and library project. In the next tutorial we will create a sample project and there we will understand the DB set and other features of StubbyDB. StubbyDB has many other features like dynamic response. You can use the regular expressions to select a response file dynamically or to provide some response dynamically. For example, if I want to select some data from input, URL or post body or from headers, I can use that data to find a particular file or inside the response file. So here we go. I can also use those meshed part to select a file dynamically. If that file doesn't present, it gives 404. Now you'll see the concept of strategy. If a file is not found and you want to serve a default response in that case, you can use the files. So by default the strategy is first found. So in case if the first file is not found, it will try to check for the second file. In our case, we are saying it if response.txt is not found, then serve the fault.txt. But we have also defined the response code as 500. So it will serve the data of fault.txt but with the 500. So here you can see the response code as 500 and there is nothing in the response body. And here you can see. So the response is served with the 500 response code, and since the first file is not found, it is trying to search for the second file. If I remove the status, which is for a particular entry, then it will try to serve the response from the fault.txt, but the response code would be 200 because it is default. You can also change the default response code for a particular mapping or for all the mappings. So now let's talk about the debug and logging. We have already seen that the logs are coming on the screen if we are using the -v option. If I use the debug equal to true, it gives me a JSON response which is divided in three parts. One is request part, so basically the URL, post body, or the headers that I used to make a request. Then it tells me regarding the meshed mapping. So if it is resolved to a particular mapping, that which mapping it is. So it helps you to know your mistakes. If you do some synthetical mistake or if you're using some wrong regular expression and it matches to some wrong mappings. If you use the wrong URL which is not mapping to any mapping, then the match mapping is null. When you run the StubbyDB with --log, in that case it creates a logs file. -v and -logs, both attributes are independent. Here we can see debug.log is created. You can also specify the log folder path in config.json instead of creating them on the root folder. So now we had hit this request and you can see some more detail than the on-screen logs. Now regarding other feature, it has HTTP and HTTPS. You can check the wiki page how to set it up, or otherwise I will cover it in some other tutorial. It also supports the compressions. So if the request is coming with the header regarding the compression in dflat or gg format, StubbyDB provides the response in that format. And the last one is content type. So if you specify the content type, StubbyDB provides the response as a file, not as a part of body. Configuration. StubbyDB supports the on command configuration. So whatever the configuration you have in the StubbyDB, you can override the configuration while running the StubbyDB command. You can also create a different configuration file and you can specify that file while running the command. You can specify the host name, port number, secured port number for HTTPS and other things. StubbyDB supports the auto configuration if you do not have the configuration file. You can even delete the config.json, and in this case, if config.json is not found, StubbyDB in itself try to build a config on the fly using the directory structure. So you can see here config.json is not found, checking for the directory structure, and since there is no red statement, it means it is successfully created. And here we go. our file is downloaded. It gives you the facility to run StubbyDB in whichever way you want. You can run it from any folder. You need not to be present in the repository itself. You can use the -d option for that. If you, let's suppose, forget those options, you can always refer the wiki page, or you can run the StubbyDB with -help command. You can check the version of StubbyDB with -version attribute. Now let's talk about the latency. Latency is something which may require while running the performance test. You may require to give some latency or rather delay while serving the response, because actual network calls take some time, up to a second, up to a 10 second or something. So you can define the latency, fixed latency, or you can define the random latency between the minimum and maximum range. Here you can see the complete mappings which are supported, and there is a sample file which is generated. If I define the latency 3000, it will take minimum 3 seconds and whatever the processing time. I can also define the range of latency. So let's suppose if I say between 1 second to 3 seconds. You can also define the status. You can define the strategy that we have already discussed. First found, there are two more strategies which are supported. You can define your own headers. You can also have multiple mapping files to keep it more organized. Instead of using this request response format, you can use sort notations. And here you can do entry of your another mapping file, which is not compulsory if you are not using the config.json. There are some useful links in the description for StubbyDB GitHub repo, npm repo, wiki page, SlideShare URL, demo application, and other things. So have a look, and if you have any suggestion, feedback, let me know, comment it, and if you feel that this video is helpful, like it. Thank you very much, and see you in the next tutorial.